Ah, the glory of bureaucracy. I thought in this video I talk a little bit about bureaucracy here in Sweden and share with you a few thoughts I have about it. Everything was initiated actually by a letter I received, and I was a little bit shocked about this letter. So I thought let's talk about it here on my channel a little bit and see what you guys think. But yeah, everything I say obviously is quite personal, quite subjective, and it's not necessarily a complaint about bureaucracy. I just wanted to really discuss what's going on in Sweden and how it is, because when you move to a new country, that is quite important and you might want to know what it is like. So thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Julie and I'm originally from Germany. In the past 10 years I lived in the UK, in London, and then about 5 months ago I moved to Sweden, just outside of Stockholm. So I just started to document what it is like to live in Sweden, from the very first day I moved here and then up until now, which is 5 months, as I just mentioned. And hopefully there will be many more months where I can talk about what it is like to live in Sweden. So if you're interested in following my personal journey, then make sure to subscribe to this channel. So let's talk a little bit about bureaucracy here in Sweden. I mentioned already in a few videos what you really need. I think there's also quite good information about it on the internet, what you need. The first steps when you move to Sweden, you need a personnummer. With your personnummer, you can get an identity card. With your identity card, you can open up bank ID in Swish. So this is all good, these are the steps you need to do in Sweden, to kind of establish yourself and like to fully be here in Sweden and live in Sweden, because it opens up quite a few doors for you. You can register for things and so on. One thing someone actually asked in a comment was, do they have to do all these steps because they're quite concerned about their privacy? And I started thinking a little bit. I mean, I've already could see it, but I was thinking then a little bit more about what it is like here in Sweden, to live here in Sweden, and to be honest, privacy. It's definitely quite different than in other countries, because your data is pretty much online and there is nothing you can do about it. And if you don't really have a bank ID, I think that's almost impossible. I don't think there's any alternative. I mean, do let me know in the comments below if there's any one of you who doesn't have a bank ID, and I mean like chose not to have a bank ID, because as I just mentioned, it opens up a lot of doors. You can register. It's, as it says already, it says ID. It is used to identify yourself, and you quite need that in a few occasions. I mean, I wouldn't be able to open up a business account, for example, which, okay, fair enough, not everyone wants to do that. But also when I register for like taxes, even with Skatteverket or for Försäkringskassan, you actually need your bank ID to log in and to look at your statuses, or when you just want to track basically where you are at, you need a bank ID. So I can't even imagine not to have it. But yeah, that also means that I'm really giving quite a lot of data to the Swedish government, but not only to the Swedish government. I don't think I would actually mind too much about that. Of course, there's concerns as well, but yeah, it's also available online, which that's my bigger concern. And I have seen like people in Facebook groups mentioning it, but there's really no way around it. I mean, maybe you can hide 1 or 2 kind of pieces of your data, but at the end of the day, it's still quite out there. And to be honest, this is something I also feel a bit uneasy about it, but then I think everyone is in the same boat. So hopefully that makes sense and it will be okay. But I try not to think about it too much. But yeah, it is a bit of a crazy thing here in Sweden that everything is quite open to everyone. And of course there are things with data protection in place. I'm not saying that. I mean, bank ID is not, I think there's really a good security around it, so no one can really steal your identity. But that's not so much my concern. It's more that the data is accessible. So yeah, if you actually think about moving to Sweden, then this is something you should maybe just be aware of, that this is probably part of your life here in Sweden and that there's almost no way around it. Maybe if you just live here a year or so, you might not even have to go through all of this and you can, still live without a bank ID, for example. But yeah, if you really plan to have a proper life here, then you just have to be like everyone else and give away a little bit of your privacy. So, and let's now talk a little bit about the letter I received. Basically, I received a letter where there was a dentist appointment for my daughter. And to be fair, I kind of thought it was advertising, I thought it was like a company who just sent me something, made up like an appointment, just to kind of, make it easier for me to choose them. So it was quite inconvenient because I'm working during the day, and so I kind of ignored it. I got another letter with another appointment. Again, I kind of ignored it. And then I received the third letter just recently, just a few days ago. And I was a bit shocked with what was in there. And it basically said if I'm not making the appointment within the next 4 weeks, they will contact social services, who can like help me or, take care of it. And I was so kind of shocked to see. I mean, I had to translate it, but I just was so shocked that they would, mention social services like I have done something really bad to my kid, And that was just my first reaction. I was like, what's going on? I had to send this letter to my friend, to just kind of ask her, what is this like? And she kind of calmed me down a little bit and just explained to me, yeah, this is actually, the service they have. I knew that dental services was free for children, and I was also planning on having an appointment at some point because even in the UK, we went every half a year since my daughter had teeth, So it was important to me. I wasn't, trying to avoid it, but I just didn't have a clue that there is so much pressure on it. I mean, we just moved here as well. And obviously we started to be registered everywhere, as I just mentioned, and that's probably why we got this letter, to have this reminder. I just didn't see that this was like mandatory and that you had to do it. So I was really confused when I got the third letter. But then again, my friend calmed me down and said, yeah, they just look after the children, they want to make sure that they get the best care they deserve. And of course, that made a lot of sense to me. It's actually good if there is the government who cares about the children and like who makes sure that there are certain rules in place who have to be followed. But I just moved here and I was definitely not familiar with the system. So my first reaction was just total shock. They don't know me. Obviously, it makes sense that they don't know me. But I just felt threatened, I was like, if you don't do this, we will contact social services. And I've never really associated myself anywhere near social services. I actually watched quite a few documentaries, about poverty and also child psychology, basic needs, and the government who's, caring about them in different countries. Like, I'm very interested in that. So that's why I was also so shocked, I never thought I would be that person who would ever have to deal with social services. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I felt basically. So when I read it, it was just like, oh my God. And obviously I felt so bad that, I wasn't on purpose ignoring them. I just had no idea that this is something which is required. So it's all good at the end. Funny enough, I tried to make an appointment, couldn't reach them, or they're not calling me back. So apparently it's not that, important. But just be aware. I guess I should not ignore any post I get. I mean, it's hard because sometimes there is advertising arriving because of the privacy. My data is out there, so anyone can send me anything. So it's quite confusing to distinguish what is advertising and what is kind of like mandatory or what is important. Obviously everything is in Swedish. I always translate it, but it's hard to distinguish that sometimes. So, but lesson learned. I feel like I need to look into everything I receive, even if it's advertising. I need to figure out what is real, what is important. and then act on it. So that is just a little tip. I mean, again, I find it really good that it's very important here to take care of the children, you know, in Sweden, and helping them, for example, with their teeth, you know, have a good hygiene and stuff like that is very important, and I really support that, you know, it's really good. But yeah, how it was kind of messaged to me was just very alien. Now I understand it better, but yeah, there's always some surprises, I feel, and that was definitely a surprise to me when I opened that letter and translated it. And then last but not least, I also wanted to talk a little bit, you know, about how it works here in Sweden with the bureaucracy, because I have these 5 months of experiences, and then I read a lot on Facebook groups, and I mentioned something else as well, which I think fits into this umbrella I'm talking about quite well as well. And then there was actually a comment, a really good comment, I thought. It's summarizing what's going on or what can go on here in Sweden. And it was a bit, you know, you obviously talk to people, they work in those governmental agencies. There are obviously rules and laws, and you have to follow them, but because everyone is quite individual, there's always a bit of room for interpretation, right? It feels sometimes you can be quite lucky and sometimes you can be quite unlucky depending on who you're talking to. And this person also wrote in the comment basically, and I totally agree, that when you have someone who is a little bit older or works for the company or in that role for longer, they are more willing to be flexible because they are less scared of any consequences, you know, or they just know what's possible, compared to someone who's maybe new in the company, who's a bit younger, who doesn't have the experience, who basically wants to be on the safe side and maybe is more likely to reject an application just because, you know, it is safer for them, you know. And that's why I feel the experience can be quite different sometimes. That's why people complain about things and they don't understand why certain decisions were made. I have to say, we had also experiences, you know, negative experiences where we applied for a certain thing and we were really surprised why we got rejected, you know. And we have to figure out, you know, what happened and who was taking care of it. And, you know, it feels sometimes it's a little bit, yeah, destiny or luck or like a poker game. I don't know. It feels sometimes quite imbalanced, and it really depends. Like I had experience as well where I was talking to someone and this person had no idea, almost sent me away, and then they got their supervisor came and just sorted it out immediately. So that's why I absolutely agree with a comment where it is about the expertise and maybe the age. It could be more to your advantage, but yeah, you can also be unlucky. Yeah, and one thing I actually saw the other day was a fellow YouTuber who kind of had to leave the country, and I felt really sad for her. She was studying here and she finished her study and then applied to stay here and applied for a work visa, and it took quite a while. Long story short, I'm sure you might know her, because if you're interested in, you know, videos about Sweden, then I'm sure you came across her and you maybe have seen that video as well. But yeah, she got rejected and even her appeal got rejected. And I feel really sad for her because, you know, she seemed to love Sweden. She learned the language and she was just imagining her life being in Sweden, at least for more years, you know, than just 2 years. And yeah, now she has to go back to the US and kind of reapply, and it could take up to a year again. And that is quite crazy, I have to say, when you're actually planning and, you know, planning a new life. For her, it's not even a new life, it's kind of her old new life, you know, in Sweden. I mean, living somewhere already 2 years, such a big difference, you know. It definitely can be your home already. And then going back where there's nothing waiting for you, maybe family, but, you know, no job, no house or no apartment. So you have to, again, also start from scratch. It's crazy. And yeah, I just felt it's a good example again for why was she rejected. It just made me aware again of the bureaucracy here in Sweden. And even if you think you're following all the rules and you have all paperwork and it makes sense that you would get certain things or be accepted for certain things, it can go the other way. And then you could be quite shocked. And obviously that's very extreme. I find that you actually have to move back and you can't continue living here. But yeah, that's a little bit my experience as well, that you have to be super careful, you have to become prepared. I mean, I researched everything and still I made mistakes, because I'm not familiar with really the system here until you come here and experience it. It's hard, I think, to research and know everything there is until you really live in that country. So I'm sure, some people will say, oh, well, this is how it works, and it's absolutely fine. Like, this is how Sweden works, but I feel we have to talk about it, we have to prepare some people for it. I mean, I wasn't prepared for every single step I had to do, despite doing so much research. And I think it's just interesting to know what's going on and that not everything is really straightforward, although there are so many systems in place. There is so many bureaucracy here in place. Many times it is all good how it is structured because it helps you, to get things done. But on the other side, there could be, obstacles and challenges. I guess this is part of life, of course, but it's good that we talked about them, right? So now you know a little bit more about it. Maybe look out for things. Don't take things for granted, obviously, and try to get as much information, but also talk to different people sometimes. I mentioned that in another video. Maybe it's sometimes changing the person, you contacted. Obviously, if it's a company like Skatteverket, it's sometimes a bit hard to just ask for another person who can handle your case. But there are ways, maybe you can improve or appeal, or I don't have the greatest advice for that, but at least I can share with you my thoughts on it, my personal experience, and also what I have heard or read from others, so you are a little bit more aware of it. So yeah, I just wanted to share with you a few thoughts about bureaucracy in Sweden. I hope you found it a little bit helpful. Thanks so much for watching till the end, and I hope I will see you in my next video. Until then, have a great day and stay safe. Bye! Oh, hey-do!